Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to build a real-world modular monolith application. We will build a shipments application which contains two modules, a shipments module and a stocks module, which talk with each other. We will use a SQL Server database. I found that ABP frameworks helps a lot in building a modular monolith application. It has a ready template, a ready components and blocks for building a modular monolith application. So you can focus on building and implementing actual business requirements, your use cases, and don't bother about the boilerplate code on building controllers, repositories, how to call a database, how to call another module, how to publish and subscribe to events, how to build UI for each module and combine it in a single deployment unit. A few days ago, an ABP Studio was officially released, and I will show you how we can use ABP Studio to create the modular monolith application. You can download the ABP Studio here. I have already downloaded the ABP Studio, and let's create our project. I will select an application single layer for our runnable single application, and I will enter the Shipments modular application. A few options you have for the UI framework, and we will use the MVC writer pages for this application. We will use Entity Framework Core, and we have a few database providers supported by the ABP. We will use SQL Server for this application. I have SQL Server running in my Docker container, and I will pass my connection string, test connection, and connection succeeded. We're not going to need a multi-tenancy for this application. We will select Lepton X theme. We're not going to need other components. And we will set up this solution as a modular monolith. And let's create it. All right, our solution is created, and the ABP Studio is preparing our project. The first step is to create our database. All right, our database was updated, and let's navigate to SQL Server. Okay, we can see that all of the ABP tables were successfully created. Here is how you can run the application. You can navigate and click on the solution runner and click Run. The ABP Studio will use .NET CLI to build and run the application. Let's wait a few seconds. Our application is up and running, and see the logs that our application writes to the console. We can navigate to the Browser tab and see our application. All right, our application is up and running. Let's add our modules. We will select a domain-driven design module template for our shipments. We will use MVC for our UI as well as Entity Framework. We will use a standard module template for our stocks. Next, we need to import our modules. We will select Install Shipments module and also install our stocks module. Our setup is ready, and now we can use .NET CLI graph build to build our solution. Build is successful, and now we can run our application. We can see that our modules have successfully integrated their UIs into our main application. Okay, now how we can start writing some code? We can open our solution with Visual Studio Code, or just Explorer. Let's start writing some code. We will start from domain projects. We will create the shipment entity. Each entity needs to be inherited from aggregate root. Our shipment entity is ready. It contains the shipment status and the shipment item. The shipment status can be one of the following, and the shipment item contains the product and the quantity. Next, we need to register our shipment entity in the DB context. We will open the Shipments Entity Framework projects, and the DB context. In the interface, we can add our DB sets and implement the DB context. Next, we need to configure the mapping for EF Core. The mapping for Shipments Modular is ready, and now we need to integrate our modules DB context into our main application. Here's how we can do this. We'll open our host application, data, and DB context. Here we need to specify the replace DB context attribute with our modular DB context and inherit from our iShipment DB context. All right, and also make sure you call configure shipments in the modular onCreating method to configure our modular mapping. Now we will return to ABP Studio and generate EF Core migrations for our module. We will select our application where our main combined DB context sits, and we will create a new migration. As we have created our migration, we can now call EF Core CLI to update our database. Let's actually start building our application. In the Shipments application contracts, I have created a iShipments service interface. We need to inherit from the base iApplication interface from ABP, and here is how we can implement this interface. We need to inherit from the base Shipments APP service, and we can inject a generic repository. Here is how we can create a shipment. The first step, we check if the shipment for the given order already exists. If yes, we return an error. If the shipment doesn't exist, we create a shipment entity, we map it from our request, and call the insert method from the base repository. And finally, we map our shipment entity to the shipment response. Here, I will show you how we can perform our mapping. We can do our mapping manually, or we can use the built-in automapper profile. Each application project has a profile template, and here is specified our mapping. Next, we have two options. We can create a controller that will call the methods of this service, or we can delegate creating a controller to ABP itself. Let's explore this option. In our application, we will navigate and find our shipments module. In the pre-configure services method, we need to include this line. We need to configure IMVC builder and add application part, which automatically registers controllers for our module. We only need to add a root path for our API. Let's build and run our application. Okay, our application is up and running, and we can navigate to the Swagger UI. Here we can find our shipments, and let's create a shipment. Success! We have created our first use case with ABP. As you can see, in a few minutes we have set up a project with ABP and have already created the database, our first entities, mapping, and the first use case that creates and retrieves entity from the database with a web API. Now let's build a UI for our shipments module. We'll build some UI for shipments behind the scenes, and we're using MVC Razor pages. We have two pages, index page and a create page. On index page, we display all our shipments. And when we load our page, we call the shipment service getAll method to retrieve all shipments from the database. In the create page, we have a post method which validates the entity state and calls the shipment service create shipment method. Here is our shipments management page, and we can update status of each shipment. And let's create our shipment. All right, our shipment was successfully created. Now let's build a stocks module and integrate two modules together. In our stocks project, we have a product stock entity. You can also inherit your entity from the base entity instead of aggregate root, as in the domain-driven design template. I have built a iStock service that returns all stocks that we can view on our front end, and the stock service implementation. In this module, I have created a controller manually to show you how you can do this, and you need to inherit the controller from ABP controller base class. You inject iStock service into controller and call the method, as simple as that. Now we need to integrate the DB context of our stocks module into our main application. And now we are ready to create our database migrations. We will navigate to ABP Studio and create our new migration. Our database migration is created. Now we can update our database. And when we refresh our tables, we can see that we have our product stocks table. I have created a stocks integration service. We have two methods, check stock and get all stocks. The implementation is as follows. We select all the stocks from the database by product IDs we receive in the request, and then we scan availability of every product. If we find at least one product that doesn't have sufficient stocks, we exit with a false response. If we have stocks for all products, we return success. Now let's use this integration service in the shipments module. And now before saving the shipment in the database, we're going to call the stocks service and ask if we have enough stocks to create a shipment. If not, we raise an error. Let's see this on the UI in action. Let's create a new shipment. We're going to select one product and specify the not enough quantity. As you can see, we receive an error that we want to purchase 1000 of products and only 95 is available. Let's fix the quantity. Create shipment, and there we have it. Now let's add asynchronous communication from shipment service to the stocks service. We will create a shipment created event, and the stocks module will automatically update its stocks. In the shipment service, we can inject an I-distributed event bus from ABP. You can use this distributed event bus to publish a message via the message queue. By default, it will be the in-memory queue. And after inserting a new shipment to the database, we're going to publish our event. I have created a shipment created event handler in the stocks module. We inherit from the I-distributed event handler from ABP and specify the event we want to subscribe to. And here we call a stocks repository to get our stocks, and finally we update them. Let's see this modular integration in action. Let's create a new shipment. Let's select a product, this one, awesome rubber, 62 in stock, and let's purchase 60 items and create a shipment. Let's update our page, and we can see that only 2 stocks are left. Asynchronous communication between shipments and stocks works properly. I was able to build this application with ABP in just a few hours. And as you can see, ABP simplifies so many things. I have only to build the actual use cases and UI. Thank you for your attention.